Welcome to the Darkstream, VoxDay, voxday.net, and unauthorized.tv. We have the unauthorized chat rolling. Already got 6 on board there. Waiting to see if anybody is going to pop on D Live. Nothing there yet. Dan says audio is good, video is good, so we're rolling. Also live, just in case you didn't know. Let me see if we can find this here. Nope, that's not what I'm looking for. Let's see here. I'll add a source and we'll see what we got going here. There we go, web page. So this is actually the new Arkhaven or ArcTunes front. That too is live, and we're just getting it rolling. Good evening, Coddington. Got a legend in the house. Good to see you. And some of this is really designed more for mobile. We need to see about getting a default cover so that when there's a broken cover it doesn't display properly. And there's a few other things that we need to do, just basic functionality stuff. You know, for example, we've got white text, and we probably don't want to do that for a lot of these, because you know, if you go to, for example, let's see if we go to Align Programmed and fire that up. Oh wait, I guess they've already got that working, so that's cool. Anyhow, I don't know why this is. Well, you can't really judge anything that you see that I'm showing you on the screen here, because when you're going through the streaming program, it tends to mess up the lining. But what's cool about it is that this adjusts much better to mobile than the old site. The old site, you couldn't even access. You couldn't even readily access most of the different genres and stuff. Now they're all right at the top. So, for example, if we go right to Supernatural, you know, there's Midnight's War. There's Go Monster Go, which hasn't been updated for over a year, so you'd never find it by scrolling down. But you know, there you go. It's right there, and you know, boom, there we go. So anyhow, there's you know, still a lot of little tweaks and adjustments we're going to need to make to get it right, but it's looking really good. And my favorite little thing is that up here at the top, next to the 14.3 million views, it actually shows you how many episodes are up there. So nearly 5,000 episodes, and there'll be more tomorrow. So anyhow, the ArcTunes dev team is doing a great job there, and so that's exciting to see. We'll do the official announcement of the launch tomorrow, but if you want a sneak preview, that's why you follow the Darkstream, right? So there's one other thing I was going to mention today. I'm trying to remember what it was. I don't recall. Good evening, top fan. The top fan is in the house. So nice to see you here too. You know, one thing that I like about the Arkhaven chat a lot, or the unauthorized chat a lot better than the D Live chat, is that it tells you how many people are watching on unauthorized. So as you are aware, we had a pretty serious outage at the Arkhaven store last night. That's where the Castelia Library stuff is sold. Had nothing to do with us. Just the entire server room was shut down for 8 hours. So I imagine they had a lot of unhappy people. The good news is that as of later this week, thanks Nebulous, we have 65 on D Live, 30 on unauthorized already. So Seems like the usual ratio is holding. Um, anyhow, uh, by the end of the weekend, I'm very confident we will have uh, all of our stuff, every single thing, uh, will be on one of our own servers. We actually have now multiple servers in multiple on multiple continents. So, and we're mirrored everywhere. So this should be positive. Question: Hey Vox, from the top fan. Hey Vox, do you happen to know if the unauthorized TV merch is still available? It used to be listed on Crypto Fashion. I wore out my hoodie. Wow, he earned his title. Uh, it's not available right now, as you may or may not be aware. Unfortunately, our friend Ian, who ran Crypto Fashion, died a few months ago, um, and we haven't figured out yet what we're going to do for a replacement. We are starting to think about that. Um, we've got good shipping now for the books. That's been our focus. Um, but now that that seems to be more or less under control, we can start thinking about uh, stuff like this Arcaven Alt Hero T-shirt that I'm wearing. Um, and uh, we've still got access to all the files and everything, so we should be able to revive that somehow. Precisely how, um, we'll see. There's a lot going on at the moment, and unfortunately, I can't say that that's our top priority right now. But we will get to it. We'll definitely get to it. Um, and I'm trying to think what was there's some Castelia library on library thing. If you're interested in following along and keeping up to date and knowing where what the latest book is and all that sort of thing, it's actually easier, believe it or not, to uh, keep up to date if you uh, sign up for library thing. It's free. It's just a free site. Um, Sign in, join the group. There's already 127 members, which is pretty good when you think about the fact that Franklin Library Collectors is only like 230 and Easton Press is about 756. It would be really great to see our numbers get up approaching the Easton Press numbers, which theoretically they should, because if you look at the size of our print runs, we should be able to reach that many. Obviously, we'll continue sending out the emails. Obviously, we'll try to keep the store updated. But honestly, it is nice for there to be a single site and a single page that you can go to, and it'll just tell you this is the latest book, etc., etc. Um, Powers of Bear says, I guess writing for Yee's News isn't high on priorities either, though Milo would obviously love to have you. Well, maybe you wouldn't, maybe you wouldn't. I haven't been on Gab today, but I did, I mean, since I posted there, in response to Milo, telling him he was wrong. So, and that is a perfect, flawless segue into what we're talking about here, about there not being any good men, where have the good men gone, etc., etc. And it's a common theme that is heard in the mainstream media. It's heard in the conservative media. It's heard to a lesser extent in the alternative media, but it's still heard there. And obviously, you also hear the male version of it. We have a super chat from Crypto Deegan. Thank you, and appreciate that. But there is a difference, and I'll get into the difference, and I'll explain that pretty much coming. Just to be clear, just to keep it balanced, it's as absurd for men to complain that there's no good women anymore and they're all sluts with body counts of 732, and you know they'll only date rich famous celebrities. They're all in love with Brad Pitt. I mean that's absurd. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. You know, I know good young women who want to get married and have children. You know, the same goes in spades for the women who are complaining, there's no good men. All I can find are players and soy boys, blah, 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 blah. You know, and, uh, you know, what I had disagreed with Milo on is that a woman had said something about how, the problem is game. Game is the problem. You know, all these guys learning game and learning to become players. And that's just absolutely wrong. And it also, I mean, it's observably wrong. Think about all the guys you know. Of all the guys you know, how many of them are actually players? How many of them are actually guys who effortlessly move from one woman to the next and attractive to all, etc., etc.? You can probably count it on one hand. I mean, even back in my night clubbing days, I did know a few players. I knew a few, epic players. I knew one in particular who was, absolutely, and I mean, he was beyond epic. You know, his level of game was like above Rockstar game. It was absolutely absurd. Um, uh, he was my hero at the time. Um, but again, even though I knew a lot of guys who were, uh, successful with women and considered attractive by most and that sort of thing, most of them weren't actually players per se. You know, um, and now, yeah, I'm sure that the social media apps, beginning with Facebook and eventually moving to Tinder and whatever has succeeded Tinder, and so forth. I'm sure that has force multiplied uh, the ability of the players to play, as it were. But there's not that many of them, and even if they are, uh, you know, cutting a vast swath through the more susceptible members of the fair sex, um, you know, on a daily basis, they can't possibly account, possibly account, for the mass despoilation of the entire female sex under the age of 40, the way that these these men going their own way complain. Um, Ironic Keyboards says, I knew one person ever with that level of game. He ended up being married with 4 kids by his 30s. Yeah, there's a fair number of them grow out of it. I mean, honestly, a fair number of them get bored of it within a relatively short period of time. Um, says, most guys I know like less than 1% are players, but that's different than being attractive. Well, being a player is a subset of being attractive. You know, not all attractive men are players, but all players are by definition attractive. You know, now granted, you can have low level players. You can have a guy who's not particularly attractive, but he tends to date relatively unattractive women. He can be a player. You know, all things about, not all things, most things about humanity, most things related to the social aspects of life are all relative. You know, um, it's very different. You know, if you're assuming that it's real, which we can't because it's Hollywood, um, someone like a Leonardo DiCaprio, who is, you know, there's jokes about him, you know, trading in his girlfriends as soon as they turn 25, and they're all, you know, or mostly beautiful models and actresses. Presumably, his level of game is much higher than, you know, your that relatively unattractive player that I was talking about, right? So, but the point is, there's not that many Leonardo DiCaprios out there, you know. Even the Brad Pitts of the world tend to be serially monogamous, right? And so that's not, it's just flat out false. Beyond that, it's wrong. Because what is game in the end? What is the fundamental, most significant aspect of game? All it is men learning to become more attractive to women. That's it. Game is behavioral makeup for men. You know, that's why we talk about natural alphas and synthetic alphas. You know, a natural alpha is somebody who intrinsically has the various attributes, physically, behavioristically, that are attractive to women. He often doesn't know why they're attracted to him. He just knows that they are. Nebula says that the modern term for game is Riz. Well, Riz, which is short for charisma. Be attractive, don't be unattractive. Well, exactly. That's the joke, but it's true. But the problem with the be attractive, don't be unattractive meme is that when people hear attractive, they think only in terms of looks. You know, it's not just about looks. It's also about behavior. It's about confidence, etc., etc. You know, I mean, I'm not much to look at. You know, I'm not bad looking. I mean, okay, I'm old, so it's almost it's almost irrelevant anyhow at this point. You know, but the point is that when I was younger, I was good looking, but not great. But I was extremely attractive because of, you know, personality, confidence, various other things. And it's true, game does recognize game, you know, because if, if people understand and they see when they're used to seeing the patterns, they recognize the patterns, you know. Yeah, Silent Draco says Brad Pitt looks with the Ben Shapiro mannerisms. Fail. Well, precisely. You know, and Ben Shapiro with Brad Pitt mannerisms, he wouldn't do as well as Brad Pitt, but he would do a lot better than you might think, because attractiveness covers a fairly broad range of of attributes. Not everybody is attracted to the same thing. And so, and that's why it's so important for men to learn game, not so they can become a player, not so that they become whatever, but so that they cross the threshold of women that would be very happy to have relationships with them, that would be very happy to get married to them. You know, the fundamental problem with the female perspective is that they're almost inordinately focused on sorry, they're almost inordinately focused on the top 5 to 10% of men. And they don't pay attention to anyone else. And game is all about allowing a young man to cross that threshold of visibility versus invisibility. You know, Venomous says, let's be real. You were attracted because of your love for quality leather-bound books. Yeah, maybe these days. Actually, it is funny. When I have meetings, business meetings, my wall of books is downright intimidating to people. It's really funny. They just if it's a Zoom meeting, it comes up, and their eyes always widen a bit, and then they go, "Wow, that's a lot of books." And it's always funny because, not always, but frequently they'll say, "So, have you read all those books?" And it's always kind of fun to be able to say, "Well, I published most of them." See the ones with the skulls? I actually wrote those. So it's amusing. But the thing is that, that's why I said Milo might not be terribly interested in having me write to him. But here's the thing. If you want to understand intersexual relations, you can't talk to women and you can't talk to gay men. They don't get it. Women don't get it because they find it difficult to be honest, first with themselves, and secondly with anyone else. How about that? Ironic Keyboard says, the cask of wine is intimidating. See, I would have thought it'd be the exact opposite. I would have thought that the cask of wine is indicative of a problem. Which, by the way, it's empty. I do have 9 refill bags for it, which I need to bring up, but it is empty at the moment. Blitzkrieg Bear says, I've always felt like wallpaper to women, and I haven't figured out why yet. Well, I can tell you why. It's very easy why. You fall below the visibility-invisibility line. You're not attractive enough. Again, that's not referring to your physical looks, although that's part of it. But it can be partly because of how you carry yourself. It can be partly because of how you speak, how you talk, how you treat other people. Any of those things. And so, Sir Hamster, he says, admitting it's empty sounds like a drinking problem. Hey, I took my time. What you can't see is that I also have a ridgeback in the corner. You couldn't see her anyhow. She's properly bonkied up. So, Driftless says, a lot of it is your energy or vibe. That's true. Powers That Bear says, mysterious can be good, but depends on the connotation. Well, again, it has to be an attractive mystery. I mean, the main problem that people have when they talk about game and they talk about male attractiveness is they're way too influenced by the movies. They're way too influenced by television. And remember, television in particular, the movies in general, but television in particular is all about overemphasis. You may not be aware of this, but a lot of actors, TV actors have a problem and an inability to do film because on film, very small motions are sufficient. On TV, with the smaller screen, they taught them to be much more stage-like, much more animated. And when you do animated, when you do animated on a big screen, it's too much. And yes, of course, unattractive men write those scripts. I mean, if you're learning your behavior and trying to become more attractive by imitating something that you see on TV or the movies, which a lot of people do. You may not realize it, but a lot of people do. When they don't know what to do, when they don't know what to say, what they dredge up from their mental catalog is usually something that's been programmed into them. Right? Nebula says confidence is number one. That's true, but you need to keep in mind that confidence is not really a standalone attribute. Confidence is a attribute that has a root in something. It's sourced in something. You've got to have a reason for it. Rainline says, so in real life, Leonard doesn't get the hot blonde? No, Leonard does not get the hot blonde. Leonard might get the, one magical night when she was drunk and feeling low and that sort of thing, at most. Stability? No, stability is not attractive. Stability, in fact, is actually kind of unattractive. There's a lot of successful men who provide very, very good, very, very stable lives to their wives, and their wives cease to be attracted to them because they're boring. The funny thing is that they just lose interest and all this kind of stuff. Of course, if he leaves her or starts having affairs, then she'll suddenly find an interest again. But but stability is not attractiveness. Emotional stability, yeah, definitely. Powers Up Bear says, so confidence is more of a multiplier. Yes, absolutely. People say, yeah. Driftless says, you mean like maintaining frame? Yeah, emotional stability, maintaining frame, those are all different ways of saying the same thing. It's about the ability to not go to the emotional extremes with the woman, in a situation where she's getting emotional. So whether it's a fight, whether it's a crisis situation, whether it's a social conflict, it is true that the men who are able to maintain emotional stability are usually considered more attractive. Austin says, I think competence is number one. No, it's not. I mean, Austin, I can tell you right now that you're a Delta. I mean, here's the thing. Everybody wants to believe that what they have and what they are is attractive. Everybody wants to believe that. A few people are crazy enough to actually come right out and argue for it. I remember back in the early days of the Alpha Game blog, an obvious Delta asking me if there was such a thing called as a stealth alpha. And I said, well, what do you mean by stealth alpha? He says, well, everybody really relies on me and everybody comes to me. I said, to do stuff, to get stuff done for them? He's like, yeah. I said, dude, that's not stealth alpha. That's Delta. That's exactly what Delta is. You're the competent guy. You're the reliable guy. You're the stable guy. And in terms of attraction, you're the invisible guy, you know. Um, and I mean, there's various elements of it. Um, Exterminator Bear says raw animal attraction is what women desire. Well, that's kind of a tautology. We're talking about attraction. That's why assholes succeed. They aren't stable. No, that's not necessarily why they do. Um, but if you think, I mean, there's plenty of ways. Think about this. There's plenty of ways to be an asshole that women don't find attractive. If you want to drive a woman away, take her out to dinner and be an asshole to the waiter. Not going to work, is it? You know, if you're an asshole in a way that embarrasses her, that causes her to lose social status, no. You know, and in fact, a lot of, I mean, a lot of people don't really understand what the attraction of of the asshole of the person that other men perceive as an asshole. And usually, the reason that they do that, the reason they perceive him that way, is because of how he treats her, right? And the way that he treats her is with what? Indifference, usually. Not necessarily cruelty. It can be cruelty, but it's mostly indifference. And why do women like that sometimes? Especially if they're attractive? Because the one thing that they fear is rendered impossible. You know, attractive women, especially attractive young women, do not want the dedicated admirer. They have plenty of admirers. Exactly, they hate clingers. And so if they just want to have fun, if they just want to have a good time, then they specifically want the type of guy who is not going to cling to them, who is not even going to stick around, who's not going to ask for, demand, or want any commitment. You know? You know, I mean, and that's why they don't get offended by them. Because they know, I mean, for all that they may, cry and weep and whatever over the behavior of some guy, that is only if they have made the transition to actually wanting a relationship with that individual. But if they don't get to that point, they're not going to, they're not going to cry about it or anything. I know it sounds backwards to most guys, but this is an absolute fact. It's especially the more attractive the woman, the more this is generally true. Because they are terrified of a guy they can't get rid of. I mean, that's why women often try to get a guy to break up with them, because they don't like breaking up with men, and for good reason. Look at the women who get murdered by their boyfriends. If you want a classic example of a woman who gets murdered by her boyfriend, it'll be a white woman who is attempting to break up or had broken up with her black boyfriend. That's like the most dangerous situation that you can have. But it's applicable in general. When a man murders a woman that he's had in a relationship with or had a relationship with, it is usually a woman who wants to break up with him. So ironically, the asshole, the player, he's safe. He's literally more safe than the nice, stable guy who just wants to treat her well. You know, I mean, think about it. Other than like maybe Ted Bundy, you know, you generally don't have good-looking, sexually successful men killing women. They're not that emotionally involved. why? Why would they ever do it? It wouldn't. I mean, when I think about the more successful guys that I knew, the Billies, the Parises, etc. Um, they were totally incapable of even imagining hurting a woman physically. Emotionally, yeah, they'd drive over them like a steamroller going over a plastic children's tricycle. But again, it was indifference, you know. Um, Maldication Bear says, my closest friend is an alpha and a player. You can feel the energy change when he enters a room. Yeah, that's something I think that's where we get into that natural level, and I don't think that that's very well understood, but it is real. You know, um, people do give off noticeable vibes. I've told you this before. I really need to dig up that picture somewhere. Um, I was just presenting at a conference in front of 700 people, maybe more. I don't remember exactly. It was somewhere between like 700 and 1,000 people, and it was like a Shark Tank type thing. You just had a short presentation about something, and my best friend. This is in Barcelona. My best friend was handling the tech side of um, the social media thing, and basically the way that it was set up, they had a special app that was sort of like it like sent things to Twitter, but it went through this app, so they had all of the messages that were going out from the crowd at the time. And he called me up laughing the next day, and he said, "Weren't?" He said, "You were presenting at this time, weren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah." And he said, he said, "Man, some of these people, they did not like you at all. It's all like, this guy's so arrogant. What an asshole. You know, all this sort of thing." And he goes, "But you know what the funniest thing is?" I said, "What?" He said, "Well, I was in the room when you presented." I said, "Yeah." He said, "These comments had all started before you said anything. You hadn't even opened your mouth. You were literally standing on the stage waiting for your turn." I'd been, because people would come up. Basically, the one person is up there doing their thing, and then the next person gets called on and is standing there on the side waiting. And so, whatever the vibe was, you know, I mean, as best as I can tell, um, it was a combination of my appearance and the way that I stood, because I did see this picture, and it was interesting how the way that I'm standing there, it made me look very, very dominant over the judges, who were these, pretty significant investors and stuff. But again, I hadn't opened my mouth. I hadn't said anything. And so, that sort of thing is not something that you can control. It is something that you can perhaps emulate in some way. If you simply change your posture, if you simply stand up straight, um, avoid, you know, smiling stupidly or obsequiously, or looking like you're attempting to curry favor in any way. I mean, that's a big step forward, right? Um, so you can't do much about that, but what you can do is look at the unattractive behaviors, and you know what they are. You know, what does a gamma do? Um, Gray Matter Bear says the Dark Lord energy was on full display. Well, think about this. How do I end up with a nickname like Dark Lord? I mean, yeah, I do wear black as hair. Well, here's actually a better question. How do I repeatedly keep ending up with a nickname that has something to do with Dark Lord, dating back to college, with completely different, unrelated people? It's because of the particular vibe that you give off. You know, um, why do alphas react in a certain way? I mean, we've been over that, the sigma alpha thing. Why do gammas just hate instantly? You've all seen it, and it's because of that natural vibe. Exterminator Bear said, "Dark Lord started in college." Um, it wasn't Dark Lord. Uh, it was actually it was actually it was actually Demon Lord, um, was the nickname. Um, Occasionally, very occasionally, of the night was added after that, and these are people that have nothing, nothing whatsoever to do with anything related to uh, the whole sad puppies, the blog, etc., etc. I don't know why. It wasn't like I was, you know, doing anything, strange or creepy or whatever. Um, but for whatever reason, that appears to be the vibe that I naturally give off, and that appears to be something that women find attractive. You know, um, but I can't explain it any more than um, than the charismatic guy who is always the center of attention can explain it either. It's just the way that it is. Um, you know, but the key thing is that, I mean, the one thing that you can do stuff about, and that I recommend to people all the time, is for guys, is number one, tone. You know, you need to always be in control of your tone. I don't have a mellifluous voice. I don't have a deep, rich voice or anything, but I do have the ability to maintain a level tone. You know, I mean, to such an extent that my friends would always get worried in a conflict situation, not when I was like heating up, but when I would suddenly get very, very polite, that's when they would, be ready to tackle me. And um, and so you just have to maintain that even tone at all times. In fact, what is the single most important uh, attempt to keep your tone level is? It's when you're being introduced to a very attractive woman. What do most of you do when you meet a very attractive woman? Your eyes widen, you you know you smile, you uh, you start to get enthusiastic. You know, you behave very, very differently than you do when you're talking to a man or a woman that you don't find attractive. I mean, you know you do this. I see practically every guy I know does this. Act nicer. Act nicer, he says. Yeah. Um, and for whatever reason, and I don't know why, um, maybe it's a holdover from my days of being you know pretty much or basically being an omega or something, but I don't like to betray myself in any way when I'm talking to something. I mean, if I'm like smiling and being agreeable, um, my friends tell me that it's literally disturbing to them. My partner back at Fenris Wolf, my best friend, uh, he used to say that it was downright creepy to listen to me talking on the phone doing business deal stuff because it sounded so absolutely fake, which it was. you know I mean, it wasn't fake in terms of, it wasn't like I secretly disliked or despised the person or that I didn't want to do the deal or anything, but it was just like, it was that fake corporate stuff. you know hey, good, glad you called. you know Good to hear from you. How you doing? you know just total not, I mean, just like stuff that I would never ever say to anybody that I know, you know um, off the baseline, right? But I'll give you an example. um, some of you have heard this before, and I apologize when I repeat these things. um, but I mean, they're germane, so it's not like I assume that all of you have watched all the Darkstreams or anything. So if you know the punchlines, don't worry about it. Um, but the user says, I can hear it there, and you weren't even trying. Yeah, it's. I kind of have to be in the moment to really do it properly, um, because it's just not natural. But um, think about this: you're in high school, uh, you're at a school assembly, and they're announcing the homecoming court. You know, I mean, they're literally announcing the homecoming court. And, as they call the names and the people, of course, it tends to be the most popular people with a little bit of a sprinkling of a surprise or two, right? And the people that are the surprises are, generally pretty accomplished in some way. So imagine you're sitting there, uh, you're a senior in high school, you know everybody, um, and keep in mind the entire student body votes from the freshmen to the seniors. So that's where you tend to get stuff that's where you get the surprises from, because often people that might not be the most popular in the senior class, have general fan clubs among the freshmen or the sophomores, whatever, right? So, they're announcing the names. The most of the people that are being announced are friends of yours to some degree. Um, in fact, more than half of them were at a party at your house not more than a month or two ago, and you're not expecting to be on the court. Your place. Um, you're fine. You're good, but you're not expecting it. And then they call your name. What do you do? You know, what is anybody going to do? Obviously, you're going to get up, and walk up to the stage just like everyone else, right? But the thing is, I didn't. You know, I don't know particularly why. I mean, it's partly because uh, it was it was the president and vice president of the junior class who were uh, no. See, Exterminator Bear says, "I would leave." No, you wouldn't. I mean, that's absurd. You know. Um, I'd been seeing this. I'd been seeing this, since the time I was in seventh grade because it was this private academy and all. Um, but I didn't. I just sat there and waited. And sure enough, it turned out that it was my best friend, my best female friend, who was the class junior vice president. And, um, you know, she just thought it'd be funny to do that. And she knew that I could take it, because obviously, if I mean, that's like, think about it. They literally made a horror movie about a very similar thing. The most humiliating possible thing. Okay, granted, the pig's blood is a whole nother level, right? Um, but the same thing applies to when you're meeting, uh, somebody that you find attractive, or somebody that uh, is influential, somebody who can do great favors for you. You know, um, because here's the thing: if you don't react the way that most people do, and when I say react, I mean uh, react in an enthusiastic way, as opposed to a polite and proper way, people have a tendency to regard you as more of an equal. You know, when I was younger, I was in a lot of political situations when I was in college. My folks were very politically influential to the point that the various candidates for governor would come by the house or come by my dad's office and that sort of thing. So, I met all the senators and all the congressmen and all the various folks, and you would meet a lot of people. I mean, um, when I went to the inaugural ball in 1988, uh, I was seated next to Miss South Carolina on one side, and on the other side was like a congressman or something. Now, the only way that people like that treat you as an equal, if you're 20 years old, is if you behave like an equal. you know um, if you're all excited to meet them and you're their biggest fan or whatever, from the very moment that you turn to someone, if you're all, hey, hi, oh, it's so exciting to meet you, wow, you're this, wow, you know this particular Miss South Carolina was much more intelligent than the one that didn't know where Iraq was, or, or whatever. That was pretty funny. But the point is that whenever you are interacting with others, you're constantly sending in them information about yourself. And Powers Up Bear says, especially in those circles. Well, but see, I would disagree. I think that it applies everywhere. It's just that it's easier to and more expected for you to respond in that enthusiastic way. This sounds really bad, doesn't it? I'm basically saying react with less enthusiasm to people. And I am, but I'm not saying be negative. In fact, that's one of the mistakes that people make, is that they're trying to be either mysterious or not be obsequious or whatever, and then they start becoming negative. I'm not talking about that. In fact, one of the ways to um, become more attractive is through relentless positivity. You know, Coddington Bear's right. It's like in football when you score your first touchdown. Act like you've been there before. It's always much more impressive when somebody scores a touchdown. You know, Emmitt Smith was like the king of I've been there before. You know, I love that commercial. I love that commercial. I'll show it on the stream sometime, where he talks about how one of the sad things about football is that they don't really get to know each other because their interactions are so brief. He plows over a redskin, goes into the end zone. He's literally like lying on top of him. He says, "Hi, I'm Emmett." To me, that's so beautiful, you know. Um, Austin said it would be weird if you got a little too enthusiastic making deals for goat flesh. Well, especially because we usually just go for the skin. Um, Cotting says, I personally like when they hand the ref the ball right away. It's like an exclamation point. My personal favorite is when they hand the ball when they're a running back and they hand the ball to the lineman uh, to spike. I always think that's pretty cool. I like to think that if I played in the NFL, that's what I would do. You know, um, let your teammates who did some of the hard work, let them enjoy the glory. But um, one of the things that, and this is something to keep in mind, the reason that this is useful advice, I think, is that one of the things that women do is they try to provoke a response. If you're not super enthusiastic about them the way that they expect you to be, then often they will try to get some kind of response out of you. So that's when, I mean, the classic example of, and I know Royce's written about this stuff, is, they'll make up some bullshit story about how they're really into some sort of sexual thing or whatever, and you're supposed to, or they'll make up some nonsense thing about how they really want this or that or the other thing, and it's all meant to try to get the guy to react, to show enthusiasm. Because I think, and if there's any women here, maybe they can help us out. But I think that women view enthusiasm as weakness and low status. I'm not sure. That's just my general impression, and I doubt that it applies universally. There's probably some high energy cheerleader types that feed off of high energy male enthusiasm. You know, I think those are some of the couples that I loathe. I shouldn't say I loathe. That's not fair. Those are the kind of couples that I find really exhausting. Compliance test. I think it's even beyond compliance test. I think it's essentially a submission test. Can I get you to somehow indicate that you are submitting to me? I don't know. But that's something that, and notice that I'm focusing here. I mean, I'm not pretending to cover the whole range of things, but do notice that I'm focusing here on things that you can control. You're focusing on things that, whether you're a weird, creepy guy that is totally invisible to women or not, you can control this. Here we got some advice. Cactus Eater Bear knows what she's talking about. Men should never smile with their mouth open. Close those teeth, soy boy. I to be honest, I absolutely hate family pictures because you're always supposed to smile, and I just, I don't smile in a particularly attractive way, and I don't feel natural smiling for the most part. It's kind of funny because two of my brothers have phenomenal smiles, like handsome guy modeling smiles, and it just doesn't work. Dark Lord smile on the inside, precisely. Renee K says, yes, that's mostly true. It needs to be confident and not desperate. Enthusiasm is a very fine line. Well, yeah, the thing is that some of the most attractive guys I've known, they have that naturally, they can flash that naturally beautiful smile just like that. It's not real. But it is genuine. I mean, that's what they look like. Coddington Bear said, someone once told me, pretend to laugh, and it led to the worst smile ever in the photo. Sam Freeman says, so be indifferent by default and maintain it. That is something, I believe that is something that you can do to be more attractive. But again, it's indifferent. It's not negative. It's not impolite. It's not haughty or aloof. Indifferent has a very negative connotation to it, but think about what it actually means. It means it doesn't matter. If it doesn't matter, that's neither positive nor negative. So if what you're doing can be reasonably interpreted in any way as negative, then that's not what we're talking about here. Exterminator Bear says, if I was noticing I was interested in a girl through my late 20s, I couldn't talk anyway. Well, that's the exact opposite of indifference. And I'm guessing it didn't go so well. I mean, women, don't get me wrong, women love it when a guy can't even talk and he's stumbling over his words and all that sort of thing. They love that. But that doesn't attract them. And now, obviously, I mean, let's face it, that I have a reason for being very, very neutral and very indifferent all the time. Naturally, that has nothing to do with intersexual relations. I mean, given that I coined the term, most people are idiots, why I'm, keeping a mask of indifference at all times. Hey, cutie. Come here. Let's see if we can come here. Hey, come here. Come here. Come here. Hey, come on. She's going, no. Oh, she's going back to her chair. It's okay. You can stay there. She does not want to be. She does not want to be on film. The camera cannot control that much beauty. So, um, there goes that mask of indifference. I'm not indifferent to dogs. You know that. Dogs are the best. Um, the Asma says, mask it indifference at all times as Vox grins at his puppy. Yeah, well, I'm not indifferent to the pups. Actually, I I, I get a hard time from Space Bunny. She thinks I spoil them, and I had to admit the other day that she might have a point. I thought, given the similarity of what was happening at that time to someone feeding grapes to a Roman reclining on his couch. but um, but the point is that if you're trying to not trying if you're concealing the fact that a significant percentage of the words you're hearing cause you physical pain, uh, and you're basically trying to avoid saying the first 37 things that appear in your head, it becomes very easy to learn to uh, make that mask of indifference habitual, and that probably makes it a little bit easier to not widen the eyes, to not get overly excited because I mean, obviously, meeting women is not really relevant to me and hasn't been for a long time. But uh, when you're meeting uh, a big investor who could hand you $10 million, if he likes your business idea, if you're looking to get signed by a publisher, if you're trying to get a hot development studio to take funding from you instead of another group. All these things apply because it's all just human behavior. It's all human interaction. And it's what's interesting to me, and this is what I think that a lot of guys don't take into account, is that a lot of the behavior that renders them invisible to women is also behavior that would be suboptimal in a business context with another man. You know, um, maybe that helps. Maybe if you think about how would I react to someone doing that to me, you know, um, the other thing that personally probably um, helps me is that I really don't like to be touched very much. Um, and I think that might historically have been something that um, made an impression on some people because you know women like to do the touchy thing and stuff, and it can be kind of comical the way that they react when you know they put their hand on your chest or they feel your tricep or something, and you look at them as if they're not welcome to do so. Um, that I think can also be something that helps you go beyond the visible invisible line. But the main thing is, I think for any guy who wants to demonstrate to women that there are attractive, good men out there, the point is not to insist that you're nicer or that you're better or any of those sort of things. The most important thing is to focus on becoming visible. You know, and if you're not visible, ask yourself why. You know, that whole peacocking thing, the ridiculous peacocking thing, what was that about if not visibility? You know, how do you deal with Italians? Their culture, the wine keg must help. Um, I'm used to it now. I'm very much when in Tokyo, do as the Japanese do, which I literally did, and ate some things that should not ever have been eaten by anyone, without ever, um, without ever, uh, wanting to eat any of it or that sort of thing. Um, you just roll with the punches. Um, Exterminator bear. What if you're not looking to be visible? Then you're not relevant to the conversation here. I mean, I don't even understand if you're an Omega and you want to hide away from the world. It's pretty easy, you know. Um, you know, the point is, if you're not visible to women, they are going to conclude you don't exist. That's why women say ridiculous things like, "Where are the good men? All there are it's they're basically saying that I don't see anyone that I find attractive. Now there is a fundamental problem in that, and I didn't bother getting into this time. There is a fundamental problem with women overrating themselves. Most women, not all, but most women do overrate themselves. They think, and obviously the whole sex thing confuses the matter because a woman can get a more attractive guy on a very short-term basis than she can land in a relationship. We all know that, but women don't like to admit it, and so uh, you know just because the captain of the football team or the Hollywood actor or the rock star was bored one night and didn't have anything better to do, um, they now think that that's the caliber of guy that they can attract. So it's absurd, you know. I mean, that's just as dumb as a guy who thinks that because he spent $500 on a high class escort that he merits women that are that attractive. You know, it's like no, the one woman traded sexual pleasure for a short-term experience. The guy traded money for it, but it's exactly the same thing. Coddington Bear says, as the meme goes, women are the gatekeepers on sex, men are the gatekeepers on relationships. Generally, with that caveat that I mentioned earlier about how uh, the more attractive women find the players safer than the regular men who are going to pursue a relationship every time with them, right? But Big Bear says the media and Hollywood have been training women to overrate themselves for 20 years now. Oh, at least, and they've certainly been training men to make themselves less attractive for a lot longer. I mean, it's funny now how bad some of those things were. You know, the whole, the whole. I mean, now if you were to talk to a Zoomer or even a younger millennial, they all think that in Revenge of the nerds are the bad guys, which objectively they kind of are. You what's the worst thing that the jocks do? Well, they're mean to the nerds. What's the worst thing that the nerds do? breaking and entering and spying and stalking and uh, you know, rape through identity theft. I mean, it's amazingly awful. Um, yeah, exactly. Um, is that a move to keep them single so they don't create more people? No, it's because it's made by creepy little guys who, as I said, everybody thinks that they're secretly the most attractive somehow. You know, if you're a if you're a creepy little nerd, then you're convinced that the hot women secretly want the smart guy, and because his love is pure or some nonsense, you know. Gamma writers, exactly. There are more women on social media saying they made a mistake not settling with their sexual rank of the opposite sex. May be a good sign. Well, yeah, I mean, social media. One thing about social media that's great is that it cuts through the mainstream media. You know, more and more women are admitting that the mainstream lies of feminism and you know non-masculine roles and all this kind of stuff are false, are lies, and they are. You know, it used to be saying that fat, ugly girls try harder. The most vocally demanding and obnoxious are the uglies and the fatties. Yeah, they're all. I mean, the more unattractive you are, the more socially deluded you are. Yeah, the one trope that drives him Driftless crazy is that ugly people are nice and hot people are mean and terrible. I've often found the opposite. Yeah, it's usually the opposite because you know the the hot girls usually are not bitter at all. The hot girls are not trying to get anybody back. You know, um, I'm still really good friends with the girl who was the. I mean, she was the hottest swimsuit model in Minnesota. She was actually up. She was up for Baywatch. They went with Gina Nolan over her. Gina Nolan's another girl from Minnesota. Um, and frankly, my friend was definitely hotter, definitely had a better body. I think Gina Nolan was maybe a bit prettier. Um, and she is to this day one of my favorite people just because she's so nice and has such a good heart, you know. And I would hear people, out of the clubs and stuff. I would hear people that had never met her, both men and women, talking about what a bitch she was. It's like, no, she's just really attractive. I mean, the crazy thing is, there are women, and I may or may not be married to one, who look, they have the resting bitch face. They look cold. They look haughty. They look like, if you say anything to them, they'll verbally slice you to bits. You know, she didn't even look like that. You know, I mean, it's like, total, you know, idealized girl next door sort of thing. But, um, people are so crabbed and envious. It's like when a guy drives by in a Ferrari and you know, you hear both men and women going, I bet, what's he compensating for? I bet he has a small penis. I mean, what the hell? It's a beautiful car. Just, if you envy it, envy it. But why would you conclude something negative about a guy who has the ability and the appreciation to buy a beautiful car? Rainline says resting bitch face is gamma defense. That's partly true, but let's face it, there are some women that just naturally have one. I mean, it's just the way that their face, the way their facial lines are drawn. You know. Let's see. I did watch with two of my three sisters. They had the bit shield to keep the gammas away. Yeah, that's exactly what Rainline was saying. Um, and it's, I mean, we've all seen it. Uh, I know a young woman who is just she's very open and she's very pretty and is just has the best heart you can possibly imagine. And even she's had to learn to like rein it in a little bit so that the creeps don't all fall in love with her. You know, she she just wants to be naturally friendly and stuff, and a lot of guys can't handle it, and which takes us back to the whole indifference thing. I mean, if you think about it, what do what do guys always say? Be cool, play it cool. This is obvious stuff, guys. This is really obvious stuff. But for some reason, people get so caught up in thinking about the ifs, ands, and buts and all the little details and everything that they lose track of that. But try it, you know. We'll revisit the subject, in 2 weeks or so. For those of you who are young enough and single, give it a try and report back, you know. Um, see if it improves the way that people perceive you, you know. And Omegas, take a shower. I know you think you don't need it. Just do it anyhow. At least every other day. It'll help, I promise. Austin says, so many guys confuse women being nice as women being attracted. Yeah, exactly. But if you maintain proper indifference, you will see the difference. You know, if she's ignoring everyone else, if she's got her hands all over you, if she's laughing insanely when you say something that's moderately funny, that you can trust. The fact that she smiled at you and she talked to you or she looked at you, no. That's what people do when people are being nice to each other. So, anyhow, I wish you all well, and we'll speak to you soon. And I'm hoping that noise is good news on the technical front. So, I'm Vox Day, and this is the Darkstream.